Hello everybody, my name is Maymoun Al-Abri. I delivered this presentation when I was a doctoral student in the specialization of Learning Technologies Design Research at George Mason University. The aim of this presentation was to introduce the trends in integrating OER in teaching and learning practices to participants in a focus group discussion as a part of my dissertation study. So welcome to my presentation. It's known that learning in the digital age is about learning on the internet using a variety of resources. OER has occurred as a powerful innovation for sharing knowledge to advance the accessibility and the quality of education for everybody around the world. Open educational resources are defined as any educational resources that reside in the public domain or that have been released under the Creative Commons license for free use, share, and modify by others. OER cover a wide range of open content, including open textbook, PowerPoint slides, multimedia resources such as video recorded lectures, YouTube clips, websites, animations, and simulations, as well as digital images. OER can also include online courses such as some MOOCs and even assessment materials such as tests and quizzes. What users can do with these open content that are on hand online? David Wiley defines the word open as a manner that provides users with free content for free use under the 5R permissions as listed below. Users can retain copies of OER resources and use it forever. They can reuse these resources in a wide range of contexts with no restrictions. Also, users can revise this OER material to make content that are more relevant to their courses. They can improve it, they can add correction to the content before using it in the course context. In addition, users can remix these OER resources as a means of combining multiple parts from different OER resources to create a newly OER materials, such as combining chapters from different open resources to create an open textbook. They can also freely share these resources to provide access to it for everyone around the world with no restriction. And the degree of open in open educational resources depends on the types of the given CC licenses. These licenses range from the most free to the least free as it's shown in the slide. In all cases, it preserves the attribution to the authors. And the type of each license determines the level of freedom users can reuse the work. The content in the public domain marked by CC0. It means that there is no right reserved under this license. The attribution is not required. Anyone has permission to practice the 5R activities, and even they can use this work for a commercial purpose. The focus of the OER movement over the past 17 years was to provide open access to these open content that are available freely and openly online. As a result, the goals of OER movement have not yet been reached yet. It is still not common in teaching approaches in higher education, and it's considered as a new approach that has yet to be implemented by educators in these institutions. However, recently, it's believed that OER has pedagogical benefits besides the sharing of knowledge and reducing the cost of textbook, which is unknown at this point. Consequently, it's imperative to explore how can faculty engage in innovating pedagogy practices to improve the use of OER from merely resources to open educational practices in teaching and learning in any learning environment. As we can see from this slide, a continuum of open movement has been evolving over time. It has been evolved from learning objects in the 1990s to MOOCs in 2010 to advance the learning in the digital age. More recently, debates have argued that research on OER should focus less on the accessibility to open content, and more on the values of openness in supporting innovating educational practices. So, open educational practices has been defined as the next phase in the OER movement development, in which a shift must occur from a focus on OER as resources to a focus on opening teaching and learning practices. And there is no fixed definition for open education practices yet, so I like to use a definition developed by Baskevicius, in which he developed it based on several attempts have been made by several scholars to approach a comprehensive definition for open education practices to guide educators toward the intended shift in OER use. So he defined OEB as teaching and learning practices where openness is enacted within all aspects of an instructional practice, including the design of learning outcomes, the selection of teaching resources, and the planning of activities and assessment. And also OEB engaged both faculty and students with the use and creation of open educational practices. And to consider the shift from OER to OEB, there is a need to understand the process of contextualizing OER use and creation that would manifest in OEB. As we see from this diagram, the most open access to resources aligned with constructivist approach where learners have privileges to practice the 5 R's. However, the least open content align with instructivist approaches, where users have permission to use OER as it is similar to using any traditional textbook. The claim herein is that the OEB to occur, educators need to use learner-centered pedagogical models to engage students in the OER reuse and creation. Here, I want to highlight critical emerging terms related to the shift should occur in the OER use. The term open pedagogy. It's defined as the practices of engaging students in the creation of information rather than simply be consumers of it. The products of open pedagogy are students' creation of content that are openly licensed and can be published outside the limits of the classroom or the course in a way that has an impact on the greater community. From this spirit, the advocate herein is to eliminate the disposable assignments that have no further value for students after the course completion. It's defined by DeRosa Robinson and Wiley as students work for a certain course that is graded by an instructor and ends up in the class recycling bin at the end of the semester. These ideas foster the concept of renewable assignments development, which define as an artifact that has personal meaning to students and is shared publicly under the Open Creative Commons license. Consequently, this discussion around open pedagogy resulted in embracing the concept of renewable assignments to engage learners in the construction of knowledge and establish the students' created OER approach, in which students are not just consumers of content, but they are active and visible participants in the construction of knowledge. If we want to open our courses, what practical actions can we take to get started? These are a few ideas for getting started with open pedagogy that highlight how OERs and the 5 R's can change the nature of a course or the new ways of how students learn. For example, Azam assigned 4th year medical students at the University of California to edit and improve Wikipedia articles that related to public health topics. That is, most medical students use Wikipedia as the main information resources. Students reported as their participation in this project that they enjoyed improving the articles and they are willing to contribute to this area in the future. And the Wikipedia traffic statistics showed that 43 articles were viewed about 22 million times subsequent to the students' editing process. Another example is a blogging post. The instructor here asks students to reflect on a movie and post their reflection in WordPress that available for public. Each student retain the attribution of their post as shown in this slide. Also here, undergraduate students at the Ohio State University were assigned to write chapters of an open textbook in environmental science. And in addition, this is another example where Rajiv Jahangiani recently trialed a new assignment in his social psychology class. During 10 weeks of a semester, he asked his students to write questions instead of merely answering them. These questions stand as a question bank to support his open textbook he used in his social psychology course, and ultimately to provide the OER Commons website with a high-quality question bank. Then he might enable more instructors to adopt this open textbook in the future to meet the need of their courses and also the need of their students. The instructor developed clear instructions, including individual and peer interaction for students to develop different types of questions. And the result showed that a small class of 35 students wrote 1,400 questions in the span of 10 weeks. His plan is to promote future students to revise and add questions to this question bank. Here are some thoughts and ideas about how the 5 R's can be operationalized and integrated in teaching and learning practices in a course. For example, students will redesign an existing resources with a focus on universal accessibility. Students can choose one of two things. Option A, they can redesign an existing website, and option B, they can create a new website based on the original idea. So if they choose the option A, they must produce something that is significantly different than the original website in terms of the layout, design, usability, and so on. So they need to attribute to the original work and adding the link of the original authors. They also need to record the changes that have been made to the original work and select the appropriate license. Or they can write a short memo, 1 to 3 pages, outlining what changes they made and why. And per the guidelines they have learned in the class. The instructor gave students bonus for contributing their assignments, for sharing online under Creative Commons license, and for publishing their work as open educational resources. Also, it was value for 25 points. So before we start our intended meeting, I highlighted the focus and the big ideas for my dissertation study. We need to build a learning environment that supports the students' creation of OER and to integrate OER and 5R practices in the instruction of learning experiences. And also we need to eliminate disposable assignments and to focus our attention on students' active participation in knowledge construction by embracing the concept of students created OER and to develop renewable assignments based on the principle of OER-enabled pedagogy. And also we need to encourage innovation in teaching and learning practices and to ensure the quality of OER renewable assignment before it's released online. This is another focus I want to highlight, which is the scope and the outcomes of the pilot study that Dr. Dabbar and I conducted in spring 2018 to examine the concept of OER renewable assignments among students in the advanced instructional design. The scope of this OER integration was we used OER only as supplementary reading, and we selected sections that only relevant to the content of the course. The focus was only on turning the main assignments of the course to OER renewable assignments. So after each assignment, I contacted students by emails seeking their permission to convert their assignments to OER and upload it in Merlot. As a result, now we developed a collection of OER renewable assignments in Merlot and WordPress for students who enrolled in Advanced Instructional Design in fall 2017 to spring 2018, and will be available also for current students as well. So these available OER renewable assignments provided the opportunity for restructuring the assignments of the course and directed students toward practicing the 5 R's and OER creation. This is our experience in integrating OER in a college course. I hope my presentation is helpful, useful, and informative. Thank you.